Baruch, keep an eye out if any Mitchells knock on the window. Or okay, live on YouTube. And
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to be live in just a moment on Facebook. The thing that rabbis have to hear at a class in Montana.
Only in Montana, maybe Wyoming.
22 or 46. Okay. Oh, Noah's coming on. Very good. Good evening, Jane. Good evening, Yaakov. Good evening, Mick. What a crowd tonight, online and in person. Beautiful. 45. Oh, Ronnie and Gabriel, Shoshana and Gabriel are on. Oh, Ruth, get back cook on Island's rolling in.
Mute us.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live, and it is Parshas Mishpatim. It is one of the most packed parshas in the Torah with mitzvahs. So we have a couple of those like Kedoshim in the book of Leviticus. There's Mishpatim in the book of Exodus. There's, I think it's Shoftim or in Deuteronomy. Please mute yourself. There's certain parshas that are mitzvah laden. They're full of mitzvahs, and Mishpatim is one of them. I'd like to begin tonight by dedicating our class in the loving memory of Kfir, Shiri, and Ariel Bibas. We all received the news today, and none of us know how to digest the news, internalize the news that the Bibas family, whose grandparents were already murdered on October 7th, and now the mother and her two sons, we were told, I think it's confirmed, were murdered by Hamas, and only the husband, Yarden, who came out last week or 10 days ago, survived. There's no words that can actually do justice or bring comfort. We have to eradicate evil. We have to stop apologizing for eradicating evil. And I'm not the president of the United States, and I don't want to turn Gaza into the Riviera. I want to turn it into a beautiful, beautiful Jewish couple of cities with Jewish settlements, and everyone living there should find themselves somewhere else to live while we inhabit it the way God wanted it, with peaceful, loving, and good people. And may Hashem send Yarden Bibas, whatever only Hashem could send, because I certainly can't. I have nothing that I can say that would comfort a man that's going to deal with what he's dealing with as the Jewish people mourn collectively for this terrible, terrible tragedy. May their souls be elevated to the greatest of heights, and shower lots and lots of love to Yarden here in the world below. But we're Jews. And Jews, we hear the news, we try to figure out how to deal, and then we go to learn, because that's what we do best. We're people of the book, we're wise, we're studious, we're moral, we have values, and our values in our study, and so we're going to learn Torah tonight, and we're not going to allow it to schlep us down too much. And in the Parsha, there's a lot of rules, a lot of interesting interpersonal laws, domestic laws of how you deal with financial issues and injury issues and responsibility for your animal ownership, etc. So I'd like you to open, if you have the Life Chumash in front of you, to open up to page 462 at the bottom. 463 at the bottom. It says, if a person opens the cover of a pit, or if a person digs an existing pit, making it larger and does not cover it, so even if you go into a public domain, and you create an obstacle in a public domain. By the way, a good example for that in Montana would be if you're using your snow blower and you blow snow into someone else, into a public area that turns into a sheet of ice, and then someone slips and breaks their arm. So you create a public obstacle in public domain that's your responsibility, and then an ox here he's talking about an animal falls into it. The one responsible for the pit must pay the compensation, either giving money or any produce of value to its owner. The dead animal belongs to its original owner. So you have responsibility if you create an obstacle. For sure, if it's in your own domain, you're responsible for anything you do. It's an American Baba Maisa. It's an American, my private property. You should have never come onto my property. It's not true. In halacha and Jewish law, you're not allowed to leave dangerous items, a broken ladder, a wild dog, a dangerous dog on your private property. And you don't get to say, well, that guy should have not come onto my property. Now, if the guy was a criminal and he was coming to make trouble, you can maybe have a case to defend yourself. But if your neighbor comes into your property and says, I want to use that ladder, and it turns out you left a broken ladder in your yard, you have a level of responsibility because you're leaving something dangerous in your property. The novelty here is that even though it's public property, watch where you're walking. Watch where your animal's walking. I dug a hole. I dug a pit. Why is that my problem? Says the Torah. No. You dug a pit in public property. Someone hurts himself. An animal dies. An animal gets injured. You have responsibility. But here the halacha goes, we're going to skip a few verses to verse 37. And that's where I really want to go today. I just wanted an intro to understand the level of human responsibility. If a man steals an ox or a lamb and slaughters it or sells it, so that's very relevant to a place like Montana. You say this halacha to someone in New York, they don't know what you want from them. Tell me about robbing a bank. Tell me about stealing a bicycle. Tell me about breaking into my car. I get it. Stealing a lamb or an ox. First of all, I was in Yellowstone on Sunday. You see a bison. Which idiot wants to steal an ox? Right? Okay, so you say an ox is a little smaller than a bison. Fine. It's an operation to steal an ox. But let's assume, right, the Torah is telling us if someone steals a lamb, sheep, or an ox, and then he slaughters it, so either he's consuming it, he's making a barbecue, or he's selling it. So Allah is, the Torah says he must pay five oxen for an ox or 4 sheep for the lamb. So when it comes to a sheep, you pay 4 times as much. When it comes to an ox, you pay 5 times as much. And this is a unique halacha, this is a unique Torah teaching regarding oxen and sheep. So let's talk about the general rule in Judaism. In Judaism in general, if you steal an item and you get caught, and you deny it, and then we prove that you're really a thief, you have to pay double. The normal payment is double. So if I come to your house tomorrow, Baruch, and I steal $100, and I get busted, you say, you come, Chaim, you stole $100 from me. We go to the Beis Din, there's witnesses, and they say, yes, Chaim stole $100, and I have to pay you $200. That's the normal rule with all things, all thievery. They let someone in, someone safe. Okay, no problem.
What page are you on?
Page 465. So that's the normal rule. You pay double. When you steal a sheep or an ox, there's a special law in Judaism. Now, if you steal a sheep and an ox and you slaughter it or sell it, for a sheep it's 4 times as much, 4 sheep, and for an ox it's 5 times. Rashi is fascinating. There's a Rashi, he's always fascinating, but this particular Rashi has always been one of my favorites for I shouldn't say always, but for a very long time. Rashi says, here it is. Amar is quoting from the Talmud. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the great Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Remember, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is the one who, after towards the end of the Second Temple era, when the Romans were very close to destroying everything and burning the temple down, he snuck out of Jerusalem through his nephew in a fake coffin, like a fake funeral, and he went to the Roman general and he said, I need one favor from you. What is the favor? Ten li Yavna v'chachomel. I want you to give me Yavna and the sages. Meaning, if you're going to destroy the Jewish people, at least allow for the Torah experience and the study halls of study to continue. And he allowed for them to go to Yavna in the south of Israel and open up a yeshiva so the continuity of Torah study would continue. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was that rabbi. So the Rashi says like this. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, God had compassion on the dignity of human beings. Which human being are we talking about? A thief. A guy who stole an ox or stole a sheep. An ox that walks on his own 4 feet, right? You just have to pull him, but you don't have to really, you gotta lift him up. And you didn't have any embarrassment by schlepping him, so the thief didn't have to carry him on his shoulders. So you pay 5 times as much because you're a real thief. There was no lack of dignity in the process, and we don't give you any discounts on the deal. You're going to pay 5 times as much. But a sheep or a lamb that you had to schlep on your shoulders, and there's embarrassment in that experience, to schlep a sheep on your shoulders. So therefore, the Torah says you only have to pay 4 times as much, not 5 times as much, because you went through a lot to do that. The Torah is paying attention to the dignity of a Ganev. There's no system in the world, not in secular court, not in other religions, that pays attention to the dignity of a thief. In America, the big hawks would say, lock him up and throw away the key. And the Torah is busy discussing how you could give him a little bit more compassion because the poor guy had to schlep the sheep on his shoulders. That's the first part of Rashi. That's Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Comes along Reb Meir, and Reb Meir says, look at the power of having an animal that can help you work the land. An ox that you stole from that person, right? You stole an ox from someone, so now he doesn't have his animal that can help him work in the field. So it's not just you stole the thing that belongs to him, you took away his livelihood. This is the animal that plows the field, so for that you pay 5 times as much. But sheep don't really work that much. Maybe you get some wool, but it's not a work animal. Therefore, you don't have to worry about the unemployment of the sheep, so you only pay 4 times as much. That's what Rashi says. It's a beautiful, it's one of, Rashi in general, if people spent the time to study Rashi, the Rebbe made major emphasis on Rashi. There's wonderful commentaries. There's Nachmanides and there's Kli Yakar and there's Sforno and there's Orach Chaim and Even Ezra. They're all wonderful. Rashi is what gives us the juice of the parsha. If you want to really, really appreciate the beauty of a pasuk in the Torah, a verse in the Torah, that's where you go to Rashi. So in 1971, and then again in 1975, both on the parsha of Mishpatim, the Rebbe spoke about this topic. It's elucidated in a very, very long, I won't say complicated, but a very, very deep, long, edited talk of the Rebbe, which is printed in volume 16 of his edited talks. But again, it's from two Fabrengens, same parsha, our parsha, 1971 and 1975. And the Rebbe has a couple questions that we need to understand. And once you hear the questions, he's like, oh my God, how did I ever study Rashi without these questions? In other words, it's such basic questions or seemingly basic questions. The first question the Rebbe asks is that why does Rashi only tell us this about the case where the guy sold or slaughtered the animal, the sheep or the ox? Every other, right? If you steal a sheep or an ox and you don't slaughter it and you don't sell it, it's just sitting in your yard, you only pay double because it's like any other case of stealing. It's only a unique case with selling or slaughtering. But even if you're only paying double, seemingly the same thing should apply because you're stealing the same kind of animals. The embarrassment and the lack of working of the animal, that applies whether it was slaughtered or not, or whether it was sold or not. So why is Rashi emphasizing this specific teaching of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and Reb Meir regarding the animal not working in the field and regarding the embarrassment and the dignity of the thief, specifically when it's sold or when it's slaughtered and not in every case of stealing? It should be the case with any time you steal a sheep and any time you steal a ox. And the second point the Rebbe points out, which should be like a first grader, I always love when the Rebbe says that a first grader should have understood this, and I'm feeling very humbled by that because I'm 43 and I didn't think of it on my own. So he says, normally in Judaism there's a difference in a Ganev and a Gazlan. In Hebrew, there's 2 words. A Ganev is the most common term, but a Ganev means someone who steals secretly. Then they get caught, so it's not secret anymore. A Gazlan is a brazen robber. Someone that does it openly. He has no shame, he has chutzpah, he does whatever he wants. We're talking here about a Ganev. We're talking about someone that comes in the middle of the night or when no one's looking, so he's stealing it quietly. So what kind of embarrassment does he have? He was doing it in private when no one's watching. So the fact that he had a sheep on his shoulders, no one saw it. Embarrassment from Hashem, but that would apply to every type of stealing. Hashem sees everything, not just the sheep. So here the Rebbe, in this it's an incredible, it's just you read things in Rashi and you don't realize there's even another layer here of how much God cares, or wants us to care about human dignity. It's true, the Rebbe says. When the guy stole the sheep and the ox, no one saw him because it was done in hiding. So when did you find out that the guy stole a sheep or an ox? When he came in front of the Beis Din. So now he's standing in front of a rabbinic tribunal and they're assessing what he owes for the stealing because he was busted, and now there's potentially witnesses that saw him come later. Somehow there's proof that he was the thief, and he's standing in front of the tribunal. His face is purple because he's embarrassed, So it can't be talking about a case, this is important, it can't be talking about a case where he just stole it and didn't slaughter it and didn't sell it. Because in a case where he didn't slaughter and didn't sell it, it's like any other stealing. What happens in any other case of stealing? The Beis Din does not even inquire as to what was stolen. They don't care. You stole something that cost $200. Your job is now to pay $400. It was an ox. Okay, very good. How much is the ox? $500. So pay $1,000 because it wasn't slaughtered and it wasn't sold. The Beis Din doesn't pay that much attention and spend too much time obsessing on what the item was. It's all about a financial transaction. You come to the Beis Din, you say, I have a complaint. Mitchell took from me something that cost $400. What did he take? He took a sheep. Okay, very good. It doesn't matter what it was. We have proof that he did it. Pay $800 and call it a day. So there's no real embarrassment there. Because even though you might have stolen a sheep and you might have stolen an ox, that is not the discussion in the Beis Din. The discussion is simply a financial one of how much you stole and how much has to be paid back, the value of the item stolen and what needs to pay back, which is double. But when you sold it and when you slaughtered it, so the item is not there anymore. And it's a unique case because here the Torah gives us a special rule of paying either 4 times or 5 times. So suddenly Mr. Ganev is standing in a court where it's not just about a financial issue. Everyone's discussing in the Beis Din what he stole and what he did with it after he stole it. He slaughtered it or he sold it. Hold on, he stole a sheep? Beis Din says, oh, now. So where did he get the embarrassment? Not when he stole it. When they're discussing in the Beis Din. So it could be a month later, a year later, but whenever he's standing in front of the rabbinic tribunal, that's when there's shame. Comes along Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and says, even though it's later on, it's not even in the moment, but people are talking and sort of creating an image in their head of what he looked like walking with a sheep on his shoulders, that suddenly, even for that, we care about his dignity. Because he looks like a real fool. He looks like a real, he looks like a lower member of society. Who does that? An ox, you say, okay, he wasn't that embarrassing, so make him pay 5 times. He's a Ganev, everyone knows about it. He stole an ox, but he wasn't schlepping it on his shoulders. This guy schlepped it on his shoulders. We have to have a little bit more compassion for what he went through and what he's going through now with the embarrassment that people know that he was. Because just think about that. You know what goes on in our courtrooms in America? You steal $1.99 from the dollar store. If you ever want to feel humble, like I did last week when I went to get some Valentine's things for my daughter's class, go to the dollar store. It's a very special part of humanity. You hang out there, and life has so much perspective. But a guy steals $1.99 from the dollar store, which is 16 items for $1.99, and you go, and now you're in a courtroom. Imagine the joke the judge will make out of you, the embarrassment. You'll have a prosecutor there trashing you like you're the worst scum in society. There's no human dignity. They try, the defense lawyers always say, he's an upstanding member. Every guy that's ever arrested is an upstanding member. 5 minutes before he got arrested, he was a nobody. But the minute he's arrested, he's an upstanding member of society, and his rabbi, pastor, priest, and imam could all testify to it. But the reality is that no one cares about human dignity in a courtroom. The Torah says, yeah, you're a Ganev, and you're going to pay 4 times for what you stole, but not 5 times. Because we need to give you a little compensation for the fact that you are so embarrassed now in public because everyone knows that you were schlepping a lamb on your shoulder. But the Rebbe takes it even a step further. And that is, you look at Rashi, and Rashi has the quote from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai that says the Torah cares about human dignity. Perfect. Why did Rashi have to add the second opinion of Reb Meir, that the guy who takes a sheep only pays 4 times as much because the animal wasn't working anyhow? But an ox, because you took him away from his owner and he's not helping the owner in the ranch, on the field, on the farm, he's not working the land, so you pay even more. What did we need that for? What was wrong with just the first opinion? And also, when you look at the way Rashi's written, it seems like there's not really an argument here. It's almost like, I think it's your friend Alex joining us. You have to tell your friends to come on time. Just say 7:19 for 7. You should be earlier. They're showing up at 7:19 in the class that started at 7. These poor rabbis in Florida. I just go back to the rabbis in Florida. Talk about human dignity. I feel bad for the rabbis in Florida to deal with Jews that show up 20 minutes late to class. Right? So when you look at Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, it seems from his writing about human dignity that inherently the guy who stole the sheep should also pay 5 times as much. But we give him sort of a discount because of his embarrassment. But according to Reb Meir, who talks about the animals working, it seems like the foundation of paying is 4. The reason why the ox pays 5 is because he took him away from working in the field. So, I mean, is there really an argument here? Are they filling in the blanks for each other? They seem to be saying the same thing, but from a very different angle. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai seems to indicate that according to him, 5 times as much is the right number, but because the guy stole a sheep and embarrassed himself, we should give him a discount. Reb Meir seems to indicate the right number is 4, and we give an extra 1 to the ox because he took him away from working. So the Rebbe says, you're right. They're not really arguing. Because Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's opinion about human dignity tells us why the thief should pay a little bit less because of his dignity. Well, how does that explain why the guy that was stolen from should get paid less? Why is it my problem that you're an idiot? You went and stole my sheep and stuck it on your shoulders. Sorry to hear about that you didn't feel dignified. Maybe you should have thought about that before you stole my sheep. In other words, we can understand from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's opinion why we care about the dignity and why he's paying 4. But if I'm the recipient, if I'm the victim, if I'm the one that the thief stole from, why should I lose out on a 1 additional payment because you stole my sheep? And that's why Rashi brings the second opinion of Reb Meir, to tell us that not just because of the thief, but even because of the victim, there's a lot less lost when you steal my sheep than when you steal my ox. And therefore, it's not only about the thief. There's the human dignity part of the thief, but then there's also from the victim's perspective. We take victims, we take our responsibility to victims very seriously, but we also don't overcompensate. You know, in America, we have this thing where they give you file a lawsuit. Dimitri, you didn't know about this, but people file lawsuits, and there's the criminal part of it. Then they go for civil things, and then they call it no, but what is it called? There's a punitive damages, an invention that God should help us all. Meaning, what does it really mean? And then they throw a number that makes no sense. You have punitive damages of $17.3 billion. First of all, it's not realistic. What are you going to take, my pants? What are you going to be? You're not going to have, you have nothing left for you, $17 billion. Second of all, why? I'm paying my debt with for my criminality. I'm even paying you back for what I stole. I'll give you money. The Torah talks about tsar, ripui, sheves, tsar, nezek, ripui, sheves, boishes. You have to pay 5 things: for the damage, for the unemployment, for the medical bills, for the pain and suffering, and for the embarrassment. Let's say fine, you pay what you got to pay. In other words, we always think about the victim and then we overcompensate. The Torah says no, victims need to be repaid. But there's also a system for that too. It's not unlimited, it's not infinite. So what does he say here? He says, yes, not just do we care about the dignity of the thief, but even from the victim's perspective. If you steal my ox, I'm losing out financially because he's not working in the field. So you're going to pay you're going to pay 5 instead of 4. But with a sheep, why should I do that? So, in other words, from the thief's perspective, from the Torah's obligation to the thief, it's 5. But in the case where you stole a sheep and not an ox, we say pay less. And the same thing from the recipient, from the victim's perspective, I need to pay you 4. But in the case of an ox, I give you 5 because I took away your business. It's just the Torah gives us incredible tools to see the world from a balanced, moderate perspective. We live in a world of extremism. You have people on one end that think every guy that gets, like in New York now, they lock up criminals, 15 minutes later, they let them out of jail. It's ridiculous. It's silly. It's how you create a very unhealthy, and very unstable, and very a crime-infested society. It doesn't do anyone good. It doesn't make you a good person by letting evil people and sick people out of prison. It's not kindness. That's evil. But then on the other hand, you have people that think everyone should get a death penalty. Every time you steal a bottle of water from Walmart, should give you the death penalty. And if the cops won't shoot him, I'll show you I have a Second Amendment. Pow pow. That's not either the Torah's approach. The Torah is a balanced book of godly wisdom and godly instruction. We take the victim's perspective into consideration. We take the thief's perspective and dignity into consideration. There's a human being on both sides of it. And you need to listen to both sides. It doesn't mean you have to let a thief or a criminal off the hook. God forbid. But it's still a human being that stole. It's still a human being that obviously went through some, that story, and I've said it so many times, and I apologize, but I can never get it out of my head from when I heard it about 9 years ago, with Mayor LaGuardia. Figalello LaGuardia, the mayor of New York. It's not an airport, just like George Washington's not a bridge. LaGuardia is doing night court in New York. And I've shared it here a couple of weeks ago. Good. That means the memory's working. I'm glad. Those what are the what's that? CoQ10 is working for the dementia. Phenomenal. Remind me in 20 years, Baruch, that if you still remember, remind me to take it. If the CoQ10 works. So LaGuardia was doing night court, and a store owner came in, and the accused was an elderly woman, and she was being accused for stealing bread from his store. And what was her defense? Her defense was that she has grandchildren that she's raising, and she didn't have any money to give them food, and she had a choice to make: either they're going to starve or she has to steal food. LaGuardia, being a pragmatic individual, he said, "Stealing is never okay. Therefore, I'm going to fine you," I think it was 10 cents or 25 cents back then, for the bread and some compensation to the owner. Then he turned to everyone sitting in the benches in the night court, and he said, "All of you are going to chip in to pay the money for her, because no woman should live in a city where you have to steal to get a loaf of bread to feed your grandchildren." And I love that story, not because it's not exactly the Torah's approach, but it just tells us that when you lose your empathy for human beings, right? I always say in Bozeman, I don't like the RVs on the side of the street. I'm one of the loudest, as loud as a rabbi can be about the insanity of having RVs with garbage cans on the side of the street. It doesn't mean I don't care about homeless people. It's called a balanced approach. I think a warming center is vital. I think making a Super Bowl party for the homeless is important, bringing them warm clothing, taking care of them, shaking their hand and not worrying that you're going to get diseases. They're human beings. You wash your hands with soap, call it a day, you'll be okay. If you flew on any airplane, trust me, you'll be okay to shake their hands. If you ever used a bathroom in an airport and you didn't die, you'll be okay shaking their hands. So there's a human dignity aspect that we can never lose. The minute we lose that, we lose who we are as Jews. It doesn't mean we have to surrender to evil. It doesn't mean we have to surrender to lawlessness. The Torah is very strict about thieves. Imagine if we had a law that you had to pay double immediately. That's just a simple law. Everything you steal, double. Crime would go down. And if you stole an ox in Montana and a sheep and you had to pay 4 or 5 times, it certainly would go down. So we don't take criminality, we don't take it lightly. But we also don't forget that criminals are human beings. We all have moments in our life where we get to a point where we cut corners, or we feel like we want to cut corners, whether we do or we don't. I'm not saying it's okay. That's part of being a human being. And if we lack the empathy and compassion and mercy for other people when they're going through their struggles, I don't know how many of you ever sat in a courtroom when someone's being sentenced or when someone's being prosecuted. I've testified in court here in Bozeman more than once for people. And one of the times I was testifying about someone, I was very careful, because obviously you never lie under oath, never lie, period, but not under oath for sure. And I was talking about how the person helped me build a sukkah and the person helped me do this. And it was all true things. I just made sure to say only the things that were good. So the prosecutor says, "Rabbi, that's wonderful. We'd let them out immediately as long as they have an address where they can live in Bozeman. Can they move into your house?" So I looked at her, I said, "Hell no." And the judge, I'll never forget her face, Holly Brown. She was a judge here in Bozeman. She dropped her face like this. And later she said to me, "No one talks like that." I'm like, "I don't know, I'm from New York. So you ask me if the guy's going to move into my house? I have little kids at home. Why would you ask me if a criminal's coming to move into my house?" I said, I didn't say he's an angel. I just said he doesn't belong locked up in prison. Doesn't mean I want him in my living room. Right? So there has to be pragmatism, but it has to come with compassion, understanding that people make mistakes, and sometimes they make bad mistakes. And for that, they pay a heavy price. when Aleph Institute is an organization that deals with Jewish inmates, it's run by Rabbi Shalom Berlipska, the rabbi of the Shul of Bell Harbor in Florida. It's an amazing organization. They take care of Jewish inmates in federal, state, or local prisons all over the country. So yeah. I mean, I work with them with the prisoners here in Montana, so I happen to know up close what they do, and it's really incredible. When they came, they used to have permission many years ago. Inmates that were sort of heading out of the prison system. They were already secure enough, and they were white collar. They were safe. They were safe for society. They were allowed to go for a Shabbos to Crown Heights and be at the Rebbe's Farbrengen. To spend the whole Shabbos in Crown Heights. On Shabbos morning before the Farbrengen, the Rebbe called one of his secretaries and said to tell Rabbi Lipsker that when they come to the Farbrengen, they shouldn't sit together. Spread them around the room. Why? The Rebbe said, if they're all sitting together at the Farbrengen, what do you think is going to go through everyone's mind? There's the group of prisoners. But if they're scattered around the room, now they're sort of immersed in the room. It's the melting pot. No one knows. They're stuck in a room with 5,000, 3,000, whatever chassidim were there. They're not so noticeable. So the embarrassment and the potential lack of dignity they would feel. No one likes to feel like everyone, oh, you're the prisoner. We had a guy that used to come here to shul. Unfortunately, he passed away from a drug overdose, but he used to come here all the time. And no one in shul besides me knew, because I used to visit him in prison before he came out. I visited him for 6 years in the state prison. Then he came out and he started coming to shul. No one in shul knew that. And no one needed to know that. What do you need to know that? No one could ever, you can't change. I say you can't, but it's almost impossible to change your perspective on someone once you know. You can't unknow that. So if people would know that, there's no way they could unknow that. So they're second guessing themselves. The guy sat in prison for 7 years. He must be some real heavy duty criminal. I don't want him near my kids. I don't want him near my dog. I don't want him near me, which is not true. I happen to know the guy, and he was one of the most refined human beings that you could ever meet. As far as a human being, one of the most refined human beings who went through a hard time in his life. From the day I met him, I have very few people that I've ever met that were that refined. Just good-hearted, and now I'm in touch with his mother all the time, and he left a 2-year-old son who's now 4 years old. But my point is, labeling and shaming and looking down at people is unfortunately too natural. So we need to do everything in our power to take Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's words to heart, to take the Torah's value on human dignity to heart, and know less about people, because it's not important to know every little bit of dirt. Someone said to me, "Oh, do you ever Google that guy's name?" Like, what do you think? I sit all day here in my office just Googling people's names to know what they did in high school. The guy I know is wonderful. Do you know what his record? I don't want to know. And even if I do end up knowing, how do I learn the art of treating people with dignity and respect, even if I know that at some point in their life they did something that's really horrible? And I'm not talking about protecting our families. We have children, we have spouses, we have loved ones, we have a community. Of course, we have to protect ourselves from abusers, from pedophiles, from thieves, from Ganev. And that's every one of our jobs. But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about someone who's not a harm to anyone. They're simply someone that's went through a stage in their life. They're paying back what they owe society. Treat them with dignity and respect. And if we can start treating human beings that way, and don't tell me about the whole world. I don't want to hear about how you're going to treat the whole world. How you are going to treat the people in your life that you come in contact with dignity and respect and empathy and compassion. Don't stick no bumper sticker on your muffler that says universal peace or coexist, and then spend the rest of the day cursing everyone out because you don't like what they did in the election, you don't know what they're doing in the next election. That's not peace, and it's not coexisting. I don't need your flag. I don't need your Star of David with your cross, with your imam all wrapped. I don't need that. I don't have a coexist sticker on my car. I just was trained by my mother to treat human beings with respect and dignity. And that's what the Torah wants of us. Don't go to extremes. Don't become a victim. Everyone's a victim, and we have to owe you $1 trillion. And not every criminal should be let out. There's a middle ground. That's the Torah. Responsibility for your behavior, pay back for your crimes, but then treat that criminal with the human dignity they deserve, because God created that criminal as well in His divine image. Have a wonderful week. Be inspired. Be uplifted. And I know tomorrow is going to be a very, very hard day for our people. I also know that whenever the funeral is going to be for the Bibas family, it's going to be a day marked on the calendar of the Jewish people for all eternity. I saw that the president of Argentina, President Milei, announced that he's going to have a state day of mourning for the Bibas family, for the whole country of our country. The whole country is going to have a day of mourning. And I think that's going to be a very, very hard day. Tonight is also the 22nd of Shvat. Tonight is the yard site of the 37th yard site of 37th. I think it's the 37th of the Rebbe's wife, Rebbe Chaim Mushka. That's why Chavi's in New York for the women's conference and was able to be at her resting place last night and at the Rebbe's resting place in Queens. So she was a regal woman, but her level of compassion and empathy for human beings was incredible. She would drive in her car. She actually drove her own car. She liked being under the radar, and there's so many stories, but she once saw a truck with people being evicted. She asked them what was going on. A Russian family was being evicted from their home, and she asked the landlord how much they owed in rent, and she ran to the bank and came back and paid so they can move back into their house. I mean, just basic human dignity. That's what we do here with Project Dignity in Bozeman. That's what we do to help poor people, like with the CPS room, what we do with the Super Bowl. Our job is to do as much as we can for other human beings to give them some of that dignity back. But going back to what I was saying before, it's going to be a tough day tomorrow. It's going to be a tough time for our people. If anyone needs to chat, I'm happy to chat, although I only have anything to say. But if you want to cry on someone's shoulder, I'm available. But we should merit good times, healthy times, messianic times with the coming of Mashiach. Well, there'll be no more war, no more suffering, no more Hamas, no more Nazis, none of that. And Gaza will be built beautifully with beautiful Jewish communities, l'shem u'l'tiferes u'l'tzilo, to the glory of God and the Jewish people. B'meira v'yameinu, amen. Have a good night. We'll see you back here next week. Sei gesund.